Hello, everybody. I'm Marilyn, and I've missed you guys. We haven't done one of these webinars in a minute, so I'm really happy to be back here today. Of course, I'm the CEO and founder of Cosmic Centaurs and the host of this webinar today, all about ChatGPT in the workplace. Tech plays a big part in what we do at Cosmic Centaurs, and this is a topic that we had to cover absolutely. Otherwise, we wouldn't have felt like we're really contributing to the discussion. So, as we all know, the launch of ChatGPT in late 2022 shook the internet more so than Kim Kardashian and has been compared to the iPhone moment for the AI industry. And if we look a little bit at kind of the history of the internet, it's easy to understand why that's the case. When the internet started, it was a proprietary network, of course, and it provided very few services like emails to a limited number of users. And it has progressed through the past few decades from, a browsing platform through, once browsers were launched, to Google coming in and truly starting and kickstarting the era of search engines, discovery engines with social media, and now generative engines. And ChatGPT's impact is not a surprise. I mean, who doesn't love it? It's my best friend right now. It's a free tool. It generates content, it writes, it debugs code, it explains things, it shares ideas for art, for decoration, for parties, for homework. You could even play tic-tac-toe with it if you wanted to. And of course, ChatGPT didn't take long to infiltrate the workplace. People immediately started using it for tasks like copywriting and content creation, even generating strategies and business ideas. We all know that if we went on LinkedIn right now, a few of the posts we're going to see are all about how to prompt ChatGPT and how to use it at work. Of course, like many other technologies, like all technologies, in fact, ChatGPT has limitations and is raising concerns about how it will replace human work and contribution. And with us here today is Dr. Abdullah Sahyoun. He's going to tell us all about ChatGPT, AI in general, and how it's going to play a role in the future of work. Abdullah is the global head of AI and digital transformation at APCO Worldwide and an advisory board member at various organizations in the UAE. He has a PhD in computer science and machine learning from the University of Leipzig in Germany, and he served as a trusted advisor for many global firms, government entities, and other organizations in Europe and MENA, supporting and guiding their digital transformation journeys. Abdullah, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Marilyn, so much, and happy to be here. And thank you very much for the people who are attending today. I think it's going to be a very interesting and informative session, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep those questions coming today. We'll make sure to answer them. I have a long list of questions that I sent Abdullah before the session, but I'll try to not only respond to my own curiosity, but also the curiosity of the audience. Please do bring in those questions. We'd love to answer them. And with that, we can start. And I'm someone who loves just plain old definitions and just starting from the basics. So let's start off with the basics. What does ChatGPT do? What is it exactly, and how does it work?
Okay, that's a very good question that I get asked so often nowadays. So ChatGPT is a tool driven by AI technologies that allows you to have a human-like conversation, more like a chatbot. The only difference between it is the technology that's used on the back end, which is called GPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformers technology, which allows this, let's say, tool to act more like a human and learn from your interaction with it. It can do also much more than only talk to you. It can also help you answer questions about certain topics. It assists you with tasks such as composing emails, writing code, and so on. So this is, in short, what ChatGPT is, so to say.
Right. And so that's only one type of AI model, correct?
Yes, it is one type of the AI model. It's called the GPT model, which is based on a technology that was created originally by Google called the Transformers-based model. OpenAI, the company that created ChatGPT, took this technology and advanced it way further by combining it with multiple other technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading about that this week and thinking how it's always ironic that it often is the case that companies that invent certain technologies may not be the ones that necessarily leverage them and scale them commercially. It actually reminded me of a very old case study about Kodak. I don't know if you knew this, Abdullah, but Kodak is the company that invented the digital camera and then did not end up leveraging it because its executives were afraid to kill their money machine, which was film. And it was so reminiscent of the Google story, not wanting to kill its money machine, which is advertising. And then to see it kind of to see this beautiful company come to this difficult moment in its history, from being the most innovative company to perhaps being the company that was too afraid to kill its own darlings, is going to be
Yeah,
interesting to me.
and when they actually woke up and saw that ChatGPT, now after they got funded by Microsoft, the company, and I think they acquired 49% of them, Microsoft. They woke up, Google woke up and started working left and right. And then they
Yes.
launched this model called BARD,
Yeah.
BARD, which made them lose $100 billion in one day, because it apparently, on the post that the
Oh,
CEO posted, there was a factual error. So the
yes.
irony is that even when they tried to push back and create their own thing, they didn't do it in the right way because they were too scattered here, left and right.
Yeah, and that's really sad because Google was very well known for the beta approach, right? Like it was known for launching products that weren't perfect, being very comfortable with that, letting people use it, taking feedback and iterating. Like if you're a bit old like me, you remember even I even remember the days when Gmail was in beta,
Yeah.
and it's really sad to see a company lose its soul that way. And I do hope that this is a wake up call for them to kind of move forward.
They're also working in parallel on something called Sparrow, which is they call another rival to ChatGPT, which is being developed by DeepMind, their
Hmm.
AI brain, so to say. They're also invested a couple $1 million in a company called Anthropic, which recently
Hmm.
launched and also an AI model like ChatGPT called Claude. So let's see what the future is holding.
Yeah, hopefully they do good things. And so my understanding about how this model works, please like correct me, obviously, because I'm not as technical as you are, is that you take a big bunch of data, you feed it to, I'm going to call it AI. Of course, it's more complex than that. And then you kind of build this capability for AI to generate its own content based on content that it's been fed. And then you have an engine that judges the relevance of content. So you generate a lot of different options, and then something says, okay, they sound good enough, like they sound like they're good enough quality, and that kind of becomes the answer that the engine gives out to you. Is that correct?
So this is one version of it, yes. But I
Okay.
read a study a few days ago that was done by multiple university professors to understand how these models are able to generate that much smart outcomes, even though on topics they were not trained on. So what you mentioned is you
Mm.
train of data, then you ask it about the data, and it can give you the outcome. But these models can do much more. Why? For multiple reasons. One, they use a different set of technologies that are different from the typical AI model,
Mhm.
like reinforcement learning from human feedback, large scale data, and. But the
Mhm.
other thing that these models do, which was also surprising for me, is think about it as ChatGPT is a big model, but because it's smart enough, while you interact with it, it creates on its own multiple sub models
Hmm.
that understand your context, your domain, your way of typing, and these submodels will be able to generate this smart outcome, even though it's not trained on this topic. So
Beautiful.
the which is a bit scary if you think about it, because if now I'm talking to ChatGPT and asking it about some dangerous things, and it
Yeah.
create let's say this small model about these topics, it can actually advise other people on these things, right?
Correct.
So it's a bit scary, so to say. But this is the core, let's say, difference between these models and other technologies, is that they are able to create their own contextual specific
Yeah.
submodels within the original model.
Yeah, I think it's as with everything, I always say your superpower is also your kryptonite, right? That's often the case, that like the amazing capabilities has secondary effects that we don't always anticipate. I think recently, like this week, someone created a submodel that he called Dan, and Dan is like a really kind of uh, anarchist persona, and then ChatGPT kind of, if you ask it to answer you as Dan, now it kind of gives you these like really angry answers. But it's also its superpower. So let's talk about the superpower first, perhaps. You know, we've all kind of jumped on board. I certainly did. I remember the week ChatGPT was launched. That week, I went into stand up with my team, and I'm like, how are we going to use this tool? You know, and so we've certainly seen a lot of organizations and people jump on that and integrate to some degree ChatGPT into their processes. Can you know, that's just one way of kind of using ChatGPT to augment our capabilities. We do it a lot around content. Obviously, we don't post what ChatGPT answers us, but it helps a lot with actually with writer's block. You know, it's a first way to start a draft. Can you think of, you know, examples of how ChatGPT can integrate into different industries or functions or parts of a business that you think are interesting use cases moving forward?
So for me, the most interesting use case is what we use it for sometimes, like my team personally, and also what OpenAI is currently doing. So
Mhm.
what we use it for is we ask it to generate an initial code base for us. Let's say I have a function I need to write in a specific programming language that generates a specific business outcome. So instead of me writing the whole code from scratch in Python, for example, we can ask ChatGPT to write a draft of the code, then we can take it and only do the adjustments that is required for us to fulfill this business purpose. So this is for me a very interesting use case because normally writing code requires reasoning, requires logic. And for an AI to be able to learn this much logic about programming languages, which is very vast, it's very interesting for me. The same thing OpenAI is doing. I've read an article a few days ago that they are actually training ChatGPT to replace entry-level software developers in their own company. So imagine the people that made ChatGPT will be replaced by ChatGPT, right? So this is one of the, let's say, one of the prominent use cases from my perspective. Now, if I look at it from different industries, let's say I'm going to look at a very traditional industry like PR and communications. We are also using it here, but of course, not fully adopted yet, to write some of the press releases of the OPADs, to do some of the research. But of course, we understand the limitations. We understand that things need to be reviewed for, and fact check and so on. So for me, these are, let's say, the two prominent use cases, which is at very traditional industry like PR and comms, which ChatGPT is supporting a lot, but at the same time, a non-traditional, let's say, industry, which is software development, where ChatGPT is also doing a lot.
Yes, it's quite fascinating to see that. And also begs the question of perhaps what other skills and capabilities we will need to train our juniors on, since they're no longer doing the grunt work. How can they now contribute in new ways? We'll come to that in a second. But through your work, of course, you advise beyond the ChatGPT model about other use cases for AI in across different industries. Talk to us a little bit again about some of the use cases beyond ChatGPT that where you've seen AI truly come to life. I mean, you know, it's always the case with technologies that you keep saying, "Oh, it's not going to come. It's not going to come. It's still too early." And then there's a tipping point, and suddenly you see that this is now here, and you have to deal with the new reality. What other interesting AI use cases have you come across?
Oh, where do I start? There are many. Few days ago, Elon Musk funded a company called Voice.ai. What Voice.ai does is it can let you speak in any voice you want in very high quality, which I've never seen before. So this is one thing where it's a tool that can be used by almost anyone in the media industry. One of the singers a few days ago, also, I forgot his name, he used AI and at the beginning of his song to say a few words in the voice of Eminem. I don't remember exactly his name, but he
I
has a
think
big
it's
concert.
David Guetta, I think, or one of the DJs.
Yes, that's him exactly. I'm not very good in music, so So this is one very prominent use case that we can also use for media, for music, for podcasting, for video editing. Another tool as well, which is let's say DALI, which is also part of OpenAI arsenal of AI models. You have DALI, which it can generate art for you. You can generate some images for you. DALI has also multiple rivals like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, which are tools that are used by our creative teams here to get some inspiration about things for our clients, because they can generate for you based on a simple prompt an amazing art, an amazing illustration of something that you can then take and use as the basis for your client work. A third example would be, let's say, a full PowerPoint generation based on also simple prompts. There is a tool called Tom, Tome, where it's still at the beginning, but what it does is you could give it also a prompt. I want to have a PowerPoint presentation about this topic and this topic starting XYZ, and it will generate the whole presentation for you. Then you'll not just need to take it and adjust whatever you want. And it will also create the design for you of the presentation. So these are tools that are used on a regular basis. Even in our company, we use some of them, but of course, very carefully. And in other industries as well, where let's say music is included or voice is included and so on.
So content, clearly an amazing use case. You know, we used to talk about AI for its capability around decision making. Where do you see that truly coming to life? Like, of course, we've been talking about self-driving cars. We've been talking about these kind of situations where AI can take decisions in action and how to make sure that these are safe and ethical. Do you see other, are there interesting examples in industry? Are there interesting examples in government that you see coming up?
Beyond content writing, there are many. So I would give you an example from, let's say, the stock market, right? I've read somewhere a few days ago that I think 80% of the trading happening now by all these tools that you subscribe to is done by AI bots. So AI bots are now trained to make the decision for you to sell or not sell. Even ChatGPT can help you get investment strategies based on certain prompts that you can enter. Some people asked it, for example, asked ChatGPT about the investment strategy of a specific person who owns a conglomerate. He's a multi-billionaire. So ChatGPT described its strategy and on its own recommended 2 stocks that are volatile in the market now that fits to the strategy. So in terms of the stock market, there is a lot happening, not only with ChatGPT, but also with other tools. The same thing with the financial market. Many of the banks and big companies and so on, let's say the banks, the fraud system, if you're applying for a credit card, or if you have a transaction happening from your credit card, there are AI systems in the back end that are actually assessing all these transactions and predicting if there is a fraud or no, right? And many others. So this is what I could think of now at the top of my head, so to say.
For sure. I think also I've seen some beautiful applications in the medical industry as well, in terms of detecting cancer much earlier than the human eye and so on and so forth. And I think this makes me think of a book that I always talk about. It's called Range, and it's about how specialists can triumph in a generalist world. And I think one of the things that it says that's always interesting to me, and I want to talk about kind of the AI-human partnership as opposed to us versus them kind of discussion, is that when it comes to anything that requires pattern recognition, right? Whether it's a decision in the stock market, whether it's fraud, whether it's kind of a medical diagnosis, even content creation, there's a lot of pattern in content creation. The machines are always going to do better than us, right? Which begs the question of what do we do better than them? And what are the skills, in your perspective, that as members of the workforce, we need to truly kind of zoom in and focus on. We often talk about, oh, creativity or empathy or all of these things that we feel are purely human as being some of the skills that we need to work on. But let's go a step further beyond that. Like, what are you teaching your junior developers today? What should I be teaching a junior marketing executive on my team that is no longer, new skills, and forgetting the old ones that maybe we don't need anymore in the era of generative AI?
So the first thing I would like to mention to your point, Marilyn, is that we need to understand. So these technologies are very powerful, right? But we need to understand their limitations as well. So they're not the genie from Aladdin, and they're not a crystal ball. They still do mistakes, a lot of mistakes. They still create random facts which are incorrect, and they still have problems with numbers, for example. So the first thing, I'm going to give you an example from what I'm teaching my team at the moment from a software development perspective. The first one is how to leverage these tools to create more efficiency for them at work. How to do prompt engineering. What are we learning from these prompts? What can we train the session of ChatGPT to actually understand the way we write code and so on? So this is one thing. The second thing is, in software development, you have a part called software development and software engineering. The development is ChatGPT, something that it can do because it can write the code. But the engineering part, which requires, let's say, business reasoning, which requires specific context of the business idea, which requires also sometimes cultural aspects, right? These things ChatGPT cannot deal with at the moment. And this is what we're training our team members to actually learn about these things, to be able to leverage the technology as much as possible, but at the same time keep the let's say the overall picture clear and straightforward for us.
Yeah. It's interesting. In some ways, and I said this recently to a team member of mine, it's like you became the manager of an intern. And now you have to be really good at briefing them, right?
Yes. More or less, yes. That's why you see a lot of these, let's say, PDF books online about prompt engineering, and they're actually very good. Like for us, we have a library of prompts now that we use, not only for coding, but also for content writing, right? Because the better you optimize your prompt, the better the outcome will be. But at the same time, as I mentioned, so I'm going to give you an example from content writing. We work with many clients, right? And each client has a way of writing. They use their own statements and so on. At the moment, it's hard to try. It's not hard. You can do it with ChatGPT, but still, you need to introduce the human element to it for various reasons. Later on, once the ChatGPT API will be available, then we will be able to train it to, let's say, client-specific OPADs or client-specific press releases, because then you can feed it information and do something called transfer learning on it. But for now, which this is something still needs to be done regularly or fairly manual.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that what it's brought up, and it depends what kind of education system you were in. I was in a French learning system, so yeah. And so in those kind of education systems, it's focused on having the right answers, but not always focused on asking good questions, right? So the entire reward and incentive system of the French education system is on getting the answer right, not necessarily on engineering the process by which you get an answer, and not necessarily on asking good questions to clarify the problem. And I think that there's a big shift there in kind of just becoming really good at asking questions. There's a big reward for curiosity, the ability to brief well, and as you say, the ability to feed in contextual information, such as, like we always joke, but in my team, like there are certain words that I refuse to use just me. It's not, they're not wrong grammatically. It's just I hate them for very subjective reasons. And so, the our team members, Karma, Tala, if they're ever writing something in my voice, they have to remember it and so on. And as you say, like now we can just make a list of words I don't use and expressions that I love and feed it to ChatGPT, and it'll keep the memory of that, within a session, and is able to generate something that actually really sounds like me. Of course, ChatGPT also doesn't know my stories, right? So while it can generate a statement that sounds like me, it can't relate it to a personal experience, to my history.
To an
You know,
emotion, to a feeling, it cannot do that.
Absolutely. And that's where I think that partnership is very interesting. Delegate the things that are not high value, they're not unique to you. And then that gives you more time, I think, to write better content, if we're taking content as an example, or better, engineering, development code, whatever it is. If you're really good at briefing and then you're really good at adding value at the end of the process, then that kind of becomes how you operate.
This is actually the skill that everyone should learn now, because whether we like it or no, these technologies are booming now. Not only in terms of text generation, but also image generation, video generation, and so on. So we either learn how to leverage them, or we will be left behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Rhea here in the audience had asked us a bunch of questions that we did answer. I'll just thank her for those questions, but we happen to be talking about them. How can we as users be good companions to ChatGPT? What skill set do we need to have? What kind of creative brain should we develop? But also, let's talk. And her last question, takes us to maybe the next point we should make is people are afraid of AI. They're afraid of tools like this for multiple reasons, right? Like, first level of fear is they're going to take my job. And so we can talk about whether they will or not. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that. The second level of fear, which is very well founded, is also ChatGPT doesn't have a fact checker, right? Like, it can change its mind about something. You can, as you said, you can teach it that 2 + 2 is 5 and it'll accept it. Like, it doesn't have a understanding of, let's say, the fundamentals or the first principles in math or other sciences. So there are kind of real tangible fears around the accuracy, the intention. Like, is ChatGPT good or bad? We don't know. Like, it's difficult to understand the ethics behind it. So let's talk about those two things. One, is ChatGPT or other AI going to take our jobs? Yes or no?
I would say, in my opinion, it's gonna be a yes,
Okay.
unless we actually learn how to leverage it.
Yeah. I have a friend who said something really interesting about which jobs it's going to take. He said to me, like, for the longest time when we used to think about AI, like in science fiction and whatever, we used to think that it was going to replace low-level work, right? We used to mostly focus on the robotization of work. But in fact, from what we see with ChatGPT, what AI is going to be very good at replacing is kind of middle level or entry level knowledge workers, which wasn't the prediction, right? The prediction was that it would kill low level jobs. Like, if you think about 15 years ago, if someone had asked you this question. In fact, my friend that did this, he prompted ChatGPT to develop a business model for him, to do the financial projections, to create all of the advertising, the messaging for clients. He actually went ahead and put money behind the ads and the business model that ChatGPT had developed for him or with him, and closed $98,000 of sale in the first month. So if you think about it, this is what consultants do, right? Like, we get paid a shit ton of money to tell people what is the right business model. So in fact, it's disrupting a very interesting part of the workforce that I would not have anticipated.
Not only that, but if you also read the news, ChatGPT managed to pass the medical exam board of in the US. It
Yeah,
managed to pass the lawyer's exam in the US as well. So, and also the coding test of Google for software engineers.
I know.
So it's a very smart tool, and it can learn from anything. So the point is, in my opinion, I wouldn't limit any jobs, even my job.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
So there's no limits. As long as we leverage it, we are okay. But if we are some of these people that are neglected, then I think we will be in serious troubles.
Yeah. I think Zakir here in the audience puts it well. He says AI will not replace you. People who use AI will replace you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, when something is available, and I love that OpenAI has made it available so widely, because you could have also thought that for a long time, because of the kind of processing power needed behind it and so on, that AI would be only available to the select few. And I think it's truly beautiful that it's, relatively democratized. Like anybody with a decent internet connection can
But
interact with it today.
interesting, the business model of OpenAI, because they're still not making money, right? I mean, now they launched this
They will soon,
ChatGPT
for sure.
Pro. It's available in the UAE now,
Yeah,
by the
yeah,
way.
correct.
But the thing is, do you know that every training ground of ChatGPT model cost the company about $12 million? Just one training ground.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm wondering, like, they've been doing all this. It's if you think about from the traditional way of thinking about business, it's not a profitable business, but it's changing the world, right?
Yeah, and profit will come, I think, when you understand that you're fundamentally changing the realities and the context of a market. I mean, it's not going to be long until they also start making you pay for API calls, for people building business models on top of the foundational layer of technology. So I think money will not be the issue on the long run. And it's also interesting to see that Moore's law has finally been broken, in the sense that the speed and the processing is not doubling, but it's like at an
Yes.
exponential rate that we hadn't anticipated in the past. Um, and so let's talk about the limitations, right? Just lay them out for us. Like, what is it that we need to be very careful with when we're interacting with these models?
So for me, there are three main limitations I would think of. One is lack of context, which means exactly what you mentioned, Marilyn. That, let's say ChatGPT understands what you give it, what you feed it, but it doesn't know your history. It doesn't know what you've been through. It doesn't know your stories. It doesn't know what you felt back then. So lack of context can impact the outcome a lot, because it can also impact your expectations of what the outcome could look like. And this is why I always try to manage expectations of the people. The second main limitation is the non-ability to understand non-verbal cues. Let's say it will not understand the voice tone, the body language, and. And the third main limitation for me is the lack of personal touch, because anyone who writes with ChatGPT with the same prompt, it will give you almost the same outcome,
Sure.
right? And this is why once there is an API available and we can start train our own ChatGPT models, let's say there is the Abdullah model, for example, then ChatGPT will be able to improve a lot and have this personal view on things, so to say, as I see it. There are some tools in the market now that mimics ChatGPT and try where you can create your own character. Some other tools where you could actually clone yourself into an AI avatar, but these are still not not very advanced, so to say.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions here from Mekla, and as well from Anupama in the audience, about regulation, about data security. What about, we're so freely kind of giving content to ChatGPT. What's OpenAI's like approach to securing the data that we're sharing there? There's when you do it on Google or whatever, you have some sense of how your data is being processed. But also, what are our thoughts around regulation? We've seen Elon Musk come out and talk about regulating AI. We know that the European Union has been doing a lot of work around AI regulation as well over the last few years. Even I believe the CTO of OpenAI herself, or the engineer behind it, she came out this week and talked about regulation. How do you see that being essential to the progress of AI, and have you seen any interesting work there?
Well, as you mentioned, most of the work that I know is from Europe, because back then when I used to work in Germany, we used to be more, let's say, into this, especially working with a consulting firm as well that used to audit AI systems, for example. So this is the mainly I think I know of that is well organized and done systematically, right? In terms of other things, I think the UAE is doing a great job into regulating this to some extent. However, in my opinion, also, and this has been also seen in Europe, that the regulation has sometimes a negative impact. When you complicate the process, when you complicate bureaucracy, innovation is halted, right? I'm not saying that it should not be regulated. AI systems can have a significant impact on society. It can be harmful, unintended, but so they need to be regulated. However, regulating them is not something easy because the technology is evolving at a very fast pace. The risks are changing together with the innovation. The consequences of using it is also changing with regulation. For example, I'm going to give you a very prominent example from a project I had. I used to work for EY in Germany for a couple of years, and one of my clients was a German car manufacturer. I'm not going to mention which one. And there they wanted to start integrating AI into their car systems. So they
Mhm.
want to do something called AI audit of the system. Okay, they start with the audit. The audits maybe took 6 months. After 6 months, there was a new technology. So they need to start again, you
Yeah.
know? So it's not something very straightforward at the moment still. And even with these regulations that are available in Europe, it still does not cover everything.
Yeah.
The only thing we can do at the moment is to advise our people that are using these technologies on its risks, on its limitations, implications, privacy issues, security issues, and so on, to be able not to fall into one of these legal troubles, so to say, that are still like like a gray area, so to say.
Yeah. I actually even think that maybe what regulates AI will be AI. Because we know of like AI's capability for mutation, so to speak. I mean, of course, it's not the right term, but AI can reprogram itself based on the feedback that it gets from the world. We already see ChatGPT doing that. Then perhaps the human capability to regulate will be set aside, and maybe what regulators, that's my view, is what regulators should be focusing on is building an AI regulator that is AI itself, because then it can prompt, it can see what answers come out, it can, whatever it is, whatever AI is being regulated there, but can do it more in real time, perhaps. As AI is evolving, so is the regulator. Just a
But
thought there. Maybe I'm a bit insane, but
there are a few issues here. One is bias,
sure.
because um, AI learns from the data you feed it, and if it's biased in any way or discriminatory, it can cause big, huge issues, especially when you're talking about regulations.
Sure.
Transparency. Transparency is a big topic because many of the AI models now, okay, we see the outcome, which is very nice, but we don't have transparency over the decision making of this algorithm. And if this algorithm is making a regulatory decision, how would we justify this? The third thing, which I would also see as a huge thing, is accountability.
Mm-hmm.
If this AI model makes a mistake, whether in regulation or in generating outcome now like ChatGPT, and I go and I use this outcome without further checking it, who's accountable? Is it me? Is it the person who trained it? Is it OpenAI? So these issues will make an AI regulator very complex, especially in countries like Europe where
Yeah.
they still have a bit of data privacy tough
Issue.
mind. Yeah, they
For
still,
sure.
yeah.
But it's the question about like, for me, it's just a theory, right? But I think we need to test it out, and of course, answer all these questions, just like we had to answer questions about cloning or about any of the disruptive technologies that we've had. And I believe in human beings' capability of doing that. Like, if you think back to when cloning came out, and we were all up in arms about how we were going to end up living in a world with a lot of, bioethical problems. In the end, we figured it out. But I think it would be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, like
I don't.
technologies like CRISPR-Cas9, for
Yeah,
example.
that's another one. There you go.
Yeah, I used to work in a pharma company before I moved into consulting. So It was a huge thing back then, especially in Germany. No, you're gonna cut the DNA and do replacement, and I'm like,
There you
we're
go.
like, you know,
But nature does that all the time, and we don't
yeah,
regulate
exactly.
it. We're about to kind of hit the end of our webinar, which is sad because there are so many questions. I want to get to a couple of them from the audience and maybe take out some of my own questions because I think it's worth to answer them. A question from Mekla, which we kind of addressed, but I think it's worth saying it again, right? She's asking if ChatGPT learns from the internet, or what sources does it get its knowledge from? So maybe it's a quick answer, but maybe you want to share that with us, Abdullah.
So it learns from the data that is fed from the internet up to a certain amount of time, but it also learns from the data that other than the internet that OpenAI has fed into it. But the
Yeah.
huge amount of this data is actually from the internet, yes.
But if I'm not mistaken, the current model only learned up to 2021 content.
2020.
Yeah. Brilliant. Another question here from Khalil. Is there a quick way to access ChatGPT? Yes. I mean, ChatGPT is available to all, and the URL we'll put now in the chat for you, but it's chat.openai.com. So outside of sometimes when the network is a bit too busy, you can access it freely. You just have to sign up and then you can use it. And if you want to spend a little bit of extra money every month, you can also gain, primary access and always have it available to you. And the second question, Khalil, about whether we're going to have demos in this session. No, we're not, but we do have a session planned in a couple of weeks that I believe someone on my team will have posted about, to talk more about prompting. So if you're interested in that, you can go there because how you formulate the prompt and the context is a big part of the approach. Maybe one last question from the audience. Do you both have any quick tips on how to formulate a brief or question to ChatGPT, or any stories that you can share? Like Abdullah, what's your break down your mental framework for how you prompt it?
Well, okay. So the way I do it is the following. First, the first thing is provide the context, which
Mhm.
means what do you want ChatGPT to act like? You can tell ChatGPT to act like a software engineer from Google with 15 years of experience. This will be your initial prompt. So this is the first thing, the context. The second thing is you ask it clearly, what do you want to achieve? I want you to build me a code in Python in function mode that does XYZ, and you detail your request very well. So this is number two. And number three is after you see the outcome and you want to do changes, you can tell it, for example, can you please focus more on this library and not the other library? The same thing goes for other non-technical coding stuff, but I follow the same context all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would tend to agree. I think for content, you can add things like tone of voice. You can add things like, what do you want people to do after they read this content? And honestly, like the best way I can describe it is literally as if you're briefing someone more junior on your team, where you would go and be like, okay, so I talked to the client. This is what they need. This is the conversion they're hoping for. This is their context. Here's what the brand sounds like. Anything that you would put in a brief, just put it in there. And as you say, Abdullah, I think you can refine as you go. So within a session, ChatGPT will remember context, and you can see all those sessions on the left-hand side. So if you ever want to go back to one, you can. And it will be able to kind of continue iterating together with you based on the feedback that you give it. And it's literally almost like working with a human team member, where you kind of collaborate towards creating something that you really appreciate at the end. And with that, we're coming sadly to the end of our time here today. I know there are so many other questions to address, but what we'll do is, guys, we'll go and address them in writing if we missed any of them in the comment feed. Thank you so much for showing up. I still have 3 final rapid questions for you, Abdullah. Are you ready?
Yes, always ready.
So please complete these sentences with one word or a short expression. The first one is, the future of AI is.
It's generative and artificial general intelligence, which is um, when one AI model can do everything at once.
Oh, so more and more consolidation of the capabilities. Beautiful. What is your favorite publicly available AI tool beyond ChatGPT?
It's voice.ai. It has to be because of the technology it uses and the complexity of the models behind it.
Excellent. And what aspect of being human do you believe AI will never be able to mimic?
I would say human emotions and feelings because these are based on hormones, chemicals. So
Yeah. All right. We look forward to seeing whether that'll be the case or not. I do hope that something remains intrinsically human, and that we're not completely replaced. Otherwise, it would be a very boring life if we could just outsource everything to a machine. I don't know if you guys have read, or if you, Abdullah, have read, what was it? It's an Arthur C. Clarke book about a future society where actually a computer makes all of these decisions for the city. I think it's The City and the Stars is what it's called. If you guys haven't read it, please go read it. And people have a really boring life because they don't have to make any decisions. They don't have to really create value in the world. It doesn't end very well, but it's always interesting to see what comes
I
out.
would also recommend another book, which is
Yeah.
also future looking. It's called Homo Deus.
Yes, absolutely.
I definitely recommend it. It also looks at the future of humans, superhumans with these technologies.
Yeah, from the author of Homo Sapiens, of course. Love him and have read everything he's ever put out. So I agree with you. Um, that's all the time we had today. Abdullah, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and sharing all of these insights. I can see from just how many people are thanking us in the comments here that you've really provided value for our audience. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Thank you for everyone who attended. Happy to answer any questions also on my LinkedIn if needed be.
Yeah, guys, please keep asking those questions. We'll come back and we'll answer them in writing. You can find Dr. Abdullah as well and reach out to him. He's very generous with his time and his knowledge. And again, as always, thank you for tuning in, everybody, and for your amazing questions. You made the session come to life. And the video will be available forever on LinkedIn. We'll repost it on YouTube and our website later. We'll send it in our newsletter to anyone who couldn't attend today, so they won't miss it. And if you want to learn more about prompting ChatGPT, we've shared a link in the comments for our session in 2 weeks. And with that, if you liked this piece of content, please follow me and follow Cosmic Centaurs. We're always posting content and trying to bring to life discussions that matter for the future of work. And we hope that that's bringing value to all of you. And with that, wishing you all a wonderful Wednesday afternoon and see you soon.